You arranged the car anyway. It was not a question. Amara said at the moment she stepped through the arrival gate at Incheon International Airport and saw the black sedan idling at the curb with Kim De-young standing beside it in a dark coat. Hands folded, expression professionally neutral in the way that meant he had been standing there for some time and was not going to acknowledge it. Kim opened the rear door without a word. Amara stopped walking. She had her carry-on over one shoulder and her academic conference bag on the other, and 18 hours of travel in every line of her body, and she stood on the curb in the December Seoul cold and looked at the open car door and then looked at Kim. He said you wouldn't need one, Kim said carefully. He was right. He also said you would say that. Then he also knew I would take a taxi. Kim's expression did not move. Dr. Osei, he said it with the specific weight of a man who has been given instructions he agrees with and is choosing his next sentence accordingly. It is 4 degrees Celsius and the taxi rank is a 15-minute walk. I have been standing here for 40 minutes. Please get in the car. Amara looked at him for a long moment. Then she got in the car. Kim closed the door, got behind the wheel, and pulled into the airport traffic without another word. The Seoul night moved past the windows. The particular quality of the city in December, cold and lit and indifferent. The same city she had left 8 months ago, looking exactly like itself and not caring at all that she had come back. Where is he? She said. He will see you tomorrow, Kim said. Tonight you rest. That wasn't the arrangement. It is the arrangement now. Kim's eyes stayed on the road. He said to tell you that the conference is what matters. That he will not be a disruption to the work you came here to do. Amara looked out the window. The Han River appeared in the distance, black and silver under the bridge lights. He said that. Those were his exact words. He practiced that sentence. Kim said nothing, which was the same as saying yes. She was checked into a hotel near Yonsei. Not the kind of hotel a postdoc or researcher books on a conference stipend. The kind of hotel that has a lobby that feels like a very expensive library and staff who speak 4 languages and don't remark upon it. She stood at the front desk with her conference booking on her phone, and the receptionist smiled and said her reservation had been upgraded and would she like assistance with her luggage. She stood there for a moment. Then she said, in Korean, "Tell whoever arranged the upgrade that I appreciate the gesture and will be moving to the standard room I booked." The receptionist blinked. Of course, Dr. Osei. She moved her own luggage. If you're here for episode 3, welcome back. If you are new, go watch episodes 1 and 2 first, because this ending is only going to land the way it should if you know where it started. Subscribe right now, hit the like button, and drop a comment telling me where you think this is going. Because Amara Osei just landed in Seoul, and she came here for a reason, and it is not the one everyone is expecting. Let's finish this story. The Yonsei Linguistics Conference was 3 days. Amara presented on the second day, a 40-minute slot in the afternoon session, the room fuller than she had expected for a paper on code switching and social dominance, which she noted without remarking on because she understood her work and she understood Seoul, and she understood that certain people in certain circles had been paying attention to a particular published case study for several months now. She presented with the same composure she had stood at the Goryeo private room door with 18 months ago. Notepad and pen replaced by a laser pointer and a slide clicker. The same internal armor. The same choice to let the work speak before she did. Afterward, a professor from Yonsei's linguistics department shook her hand and said her case study had been the most cited new entry in their field databases in the past quarter. She thanked him. A graduate student asked if the dominant party in her research had ever read the published work. She said that was beyond the scope of today's presentation and smiled and moved on. On the third evening, at the conference dinner, her phone vibrated. One message, no greeting, in Korean. The Shin faction made contact with one of your conference co-presenters today. I have handled it. You should know. She read it twice. Then she typed back, in Korean, which presenter. The response came in under a minute. Professor Lim Jae-hoon. They were asking about your methodology, whether your research subjects had consented, whether there was additional unpublished data. She typed, there isn't. He typed, I know. I told him that. She typed, and they believed you this time. A pause. Then, I was more persuasive than last time. She put her phone in her bag and looked at the conference dinner around her, academics from 6 countries, wine glasses, the warm noise of people who spend their lives in language talking to each other freely. And she thought about what more persuasive meant in the vocabulary of Jang Hyunwoo and decided, again, that there were rooms she was not going to open the door to. But she also thought about the fact that he had told her. Immediately, without waiting to see if it resolved itself. Without the 3-week delay of a USB drive. He was learning. She was not sure what to do with that. She messaged him the next morning. Not a response to the Shin faction update. A different message. Direct, as she had always been with him. I want to meet. Not dinner. Not the private room at Goryeo. Somewhere neutral. You choose, but make it somewhere public. His response took 4 minutes. Bukchon. The tea house on the north end. Noon. She arrived at 11:55 because she was not someone who arrived late to things that mattered. The tea house was small and old and genuinely beautiful. Wooden beams, paper screens, the particular stillness of a place that had been serving tea for longer than either of them had been alive. 2 other tables were occupied by tourists with cameras. A third by an elderly Korean man reading a newspaper. It was as public and as ordinary as Seoul got. Jang was already there. He was at the corner table, back to the wall. Old habit, she understood the instinct of a man who had spent 20 years making sure he could see every door. He was in a dark coat, no suit underneath, a plain black sweater. He looked, she thought, like a version of himself that the private dining room never showed. Less constructed, more tired, more human. He stood when she came in. She sat down across from him without ceremony. You can sit, she said. He sat. A server came. They ordered tea. When she left, the silence between them was the kind that had its own texture. Not uncomfortable, not easy, the specific silence of 2 people who have said significant things to each other across significant distance and are now, for the first time, in the same room with all of it. The Shin faction, she said. Is it finished? Yes. Flat. Final. She had learned to trust that tone. What did you do? He looked at her. Do you want the details? No, she said. I want to know it's done. It's done. She nodded once. Good. She wrapped both hands around her teacup. Now I need to say something to you, and I need you to hear it completely before you respond. He said nothing, which was the correct response. You came into a restaurant 14 months ago, she said, and you looked at me and decided I was small. You decided that before I opened my mouth, before I had done a single thing to earn that assessment. You decided it because of what I looked like and where I was standing and what I was holding, and you used 3 languages to try to make that smallness real in front of an audience. She paused. I need you to understand something about that. Not for my sake. I handled it. I always handle it. I need you to understand it, because I don't think you have ever sat with what that decision actually says about you, and I think you are a more intelligent man than the one who made it. Jang had not moved. His eyes were on her face with the specific quality of attention she had seen him direct at things that mattered. He was listening, completely. You have spent the last 8 months apologizing to me in increasingly elaborate ways, she continued. A letter in 3 languages. A USB drive. A recording. An upgraded hotel room I moved out of. A car I didn't take. All of it is, I hear it. I understand what you were trying to say. But an apology for the wrong thing misses the point. She set her teacup down. You don't owe me an apology for underestimating me. I survived that. I have been surviving that my entire life. What I need you to understand, what I think you still have not understood, is that your assumption that night was not just about me. It is about every woman who comes through a door holding a notepad who you have already decided is beneath your attention before she speaks. And some of those women do not have 4 languages and a linguistics PhD. Some of them just have the job and the dignity that comes with it. And they deserved better from you too. The tea house was very quiet. The tourists at the other table were looking at a map. The old man read his newspaper. The paper screens let in the cold, gray December light. Jang was still. The kind of still that she had learned, over many months of watching him, meant something was moving through him that he was not going to perform or manage. Just hold. You're right, he said. I know, she said. I have thought about it. He paused. The night. The room. Not just that you answered me. The way I looked at you when you came through the door. Another pause. I have thought about it more than I have thought about most things. And, and I don't have a clean answer for why I am the way I became. He looked at his tea. I have a world where power is the only currency anyone understands. I learned to read it very early, and I stopped seeing the things that were not inside that framework. People became useful or not useful, dangerous or not dangerous. He looked up. You didn't fit either category, and I defaulted to the one that made the most sense in that room. Beneath you, she said. Yes. The word was clean and honest and cost him something. And now, he met her eyes. Now I know that the most dangerous assumption I have ever made in a room full of dangerous men was the one I made about a woman with a notepad. If you're still watching this, I need you to drop a comment right now, because this conversation is the entire reason this story exists, and I need to know if you felt it. Like this video. Share it with someone who needs to hear what Amara is about to say next. We are almost at the end of this story, and I promise you, the last thing she says to him is going to stay with you. Keep watching. Amara looked at him for a long moment. She was studying his face the way she had studied it across tables and restaurant doors and coffee shop windows for months, looking for the angle, the performance, the managed version underneath. She did not find it. What she found was what had been there since the 11 seconds of silence on the recording. A man who had been seen accurately for the first time and was still sitting with what that meant. I'm going back to Atlanta on Friday, she said. Something moved in his expression. He did not let it fully arrive. I know, he said. The work I'm doing at Emory is important. The postdoc is a 2-year commitment, and I intend to finish it. I have students who argue with me in office hours and research that is getting traction in a life that I built from the ground up in a city that is mine. She paused. I'm not here to become part of your world. I was never going to become part of your world. I think you have always known that. Yes, he said quietly. Then I want you to understand what I'm going to say next as clearly as you have ever understood anything. She leaned forward slightly. I am remarkable. Not because I answered you in Bukchon dialect in front of your associates. Not because I wrote a dissertation that made you feel seen. I am remarkable because I walked into a room where every single thing was designed to make me feel invisible, and I stayed exactly who I was. I did not shrink. I did not perform. I did not adjust myself to fit the space you left for me. Her voice was steady and absolute. That is not something you gave me. That is not something you revealed in me. I walked in with it, and I will walk out of every room I ever enter with it still intact, whether you are in the room or not. Jang looked at her across the small table in the old tea house in Bukchon with the December light coming through the paper screens and said nothing for a long time. Then he said, very quietly in Korean, I know. Then what do you want from me? She said. Honestly, not the managed answer. He looked at the tea in his hands. For the first time in all the months she had been observing Jang Hyun-woo, in all the rooms and across all the silences and through all the careful language, he looked like a man who did not know exactly what to say. Not because he was performing uncertainty, because he was actually uncertain. I want to know that you are all right, he said finally. That is the first thing. After everything last year, the Shin faction, Sungmin, the letter, all of it, I want to know from you directly that you are all right. I'm all right, she said. I know. I can see that. A pause. I needed to hear it. And the second thing, she said. He looked up. There is a second thing. There is always a second thing with you. You structure your sentences in twos. First the manageable thing, then the real thing. The corner of his mouth moved. The almost smile she had cataloged from the very first visit to Goryeo. You studied me, he said. I published a paper about you, she said. Yes. He set his teacup down. I want you to know, he said, that the man who sat at that table and used 3 languages to try to make you feel small, I am not working to stop being him for you. I am working to stop being him because he was wrong. Because the world is full of people that version of me was walking past, and that is not the man I intend to be. He paused. You showed me the gap. You did not cause it. It was already there. I just could not see it from where I was standing. Amara was quiet for a moment. She looked at him carefully, the sharp angles of his face in the December light, the hands around the teacup that had once snapped and the room had gone cold, the eyes that had looked at her like something already decided and were now different, not soft, He was not a soft man, and she did not trust softness that arrived too quickly in people who had spent a long time being something else. But different. Working. The specific look of someone doing the slow, difficult internal work that does not announce itself. That, she said, is the first genuinely self-aware thing you have said to me without being prompted. I have been practicing, he said. I can tell. She paused. It's a good sentence. Thank you. Do not let it become a performance. I know, he said. And he did know. That was the thing about Jang Hyun-woo. He was the most precise person she had ever observed. When he understood something, he understood it completely. The problem had never been his intelligence. It had been what his intelligence had been aimed at. She picked up her tea. I'm going to say something now that I want you to hear as what it is. Not as an invitation, not as a door. Just as a true thing. He nodded. You are more interesting than the version of yourself you show the world, she said. The man who spent 4 drafts on a Chui apology. The man who ended a 5-year business relationship because someone framed something wrong. The man who sat alone in a room and read 40 pages of academic linguistics because someone wrote something true about him. That man is more interesting than the crime boss in the charcoal suit who uses Busan dialect as a weapon. She paused. I hope he gets more room. That is all. I genuinely hope he gets more room. Jang looked at her for a long time. The tea house was warm and small around them. The December cold pressed against the paper screens from outside. Somewhere nearby, a temple bell moved in the wind, one note fading. You came back to Seoul, he said, to say that to my face. I came back to Seoul for a linguistics conference at Yonsei University, she said. And yes, also to say that to your face. Because you mailed me a USB drive and called me at 6:45 in the morning and had someone write an apology in Chui, and none of that deserved a text message in response. No, he agreed. It didn't. She stood. He stood immediately. The reflex of a man whose manner, whatever else it carried, had always been precise. She picked up her bag. She looked at him one more time across the small table in the old tea house with the December Bukchon light around them. The next time you walk into a room, she said, and someone comes through the door holding a notepad, look at them properly before you decide anything. You don't know what language they speak. You don't know what they've survived. You don't know what they are building. She paused. Look properly. I will, he said. She believed him. She walked out of the tea house into the Bukchon afternoon. The narrow stone streets, the tiled rooftops, the cold, clean-souled December air, and she did not look back. Not because there was nothing behind her worth looking at, but because she had said everything that needed to be said, and she was Amara Osei, and she had never needed to look back to know who she was. She flew out of Incheon on Friday morning at 7. Senna had sent her 17 voice notes in the preceding 48 hours demanding a full report, which she listened on the way to the airport and responded to with a single message. It went the way it needed to go. Senna responded, Did you tell him? She typed, everything. Senna typed, and she looked out the taxi window at the Seoul highway in the early morning. The city moving in its ordinary rush hour current, indifferent and alive, the same city that had given her 18 months of language and data, and one unexpected case study that had become the most important chapter of her career and the most complicated chapter of her life. She typed, and he listened, really listened. That was all it needed to be. Senna sent back one word. Good. At 30,000 feet, climbing out of Seoul into the pale winter sky, she opened her laptop and opened the document with no title. 11 pages the last time she had looked at it. She read from the beginning, the woman in the private dining room, the notepad, the 3 languages, the silence, and then she kept writing. She wrote through the USB drive and the kitchen floor and the tea house in Bukchon. She wrote toward an ending that was not a love story in the conventional sense because it had never been that kind of story. It was a story about a woman who walked into a room that was designed to diminish her and chose, at every point, to remain exactly herself. It was a story about what happens when someone finally decides to look properly. It was a story about language and power and the precise moment when assumption meets its limit. She found the title at 35,000 feet, somewhere over the yellow sea, in the clean white silence above the clouds. She typed it at the top of the document and looked at it for a moment. Then she saved it, closed the laptop, and looked out the window at the sky, wide and clear and going all the way to Atlanta, and felt exactly like herself. Fully, completely, without adjustment or apology. Which was, she understood now, exactly how she had always felt. She had just finally written it down. And that is the end. Not just episode 3. The end of Amara Osei's story. All of it, from the moment she walked into room 3 with a notepad to the moment she flew out of Seoul having said everything that needed to be said to the man who had tried to make her invisible and instead made her inevitable. If this story moved you, if any part of it stayed with you, I need you to drop a comment right now. Tell me your favorite moment across all 3 episodes. Tell me what Amara said that you needed to hear. Tell me if this story reminded you of yourself in any room you have ever walked into. This channel exists for stories like this one. If you're not subscribed yet, please do it right now. Hit the bell, like this video, share it with every woman you know who has ever been underestimated in a room and handled it with grace. Thank you for watching all 3 episodes. You showed up every time. That means everything. More stories are coming, and I promise they will be worth every minute.